Universal education is the aim of all nations. Since education is an important aspect for all human beings to achieve greater heights, so special attention is paid for education, and education system is relaxed and made more flexible. We knew all human beings is always compared to a machine which works without rest. To create many ideas, express many feelings, introduce thoughts, etc., the input a human gets decided his intelligence rate. The sense of hearing plays a vital role in getting these inputs. When the person is unable to hear as a normal person hears leads to hearing impairment. The hearing disability is one of the unique disabilities. This makes the inclusion power to get slower also make it difficult. Unlike other disabilities, the hearing impairment primarily deals with the language and communication. Hearing impairment should not be phrased as hearing handicap because impairment is not the physical loss of an organ, unlike it is a hole in the eardrum, etc. With normal hearing ability, people are aware of signals. They hear various sounds and languages, and they are also linked with other people with active communication. The above all are not gained by a person who has a hearing disability. The child with hearing impairment, when lose the family support, is turned into a hearing handicap. Early detection and intervention can avoid the severity of these types of losses. General awareness and rehabilitation for this loss among the public is low. Due to that, the prevalence of deafness is more prevalent in India. Deafness is defined as hearing impairment that is so severe that the child is impaired in processing linguistic information through hearing, with or without amplification. Thus, deafness may be viewed as a condition that prevents an individual from receiving sound in most of its forms. On the other hand, a child with hearing loss can generally respond to auditory stimuli, including speech. Hearing impairment is defined as an impairment in hearing, whether permanent or fluctuating, that affects a child's educational performance. Hearing impairment or deafness is when your hearing is affected by a condition or injury. Some people are born with a hearing loss, while others may develop it as they get older. Most commonly, hearing loss happens with age or is caused by loud noises. In simple words, it can be defined as the inability to hear as a normal person. Hearing is the through which we can acquire knowledge and get linked with the surroundings. If a child is affected, then it is the family that should take care of them and make them familiar with some sign languages and make friends for them to communicate. The people with hearing loss do things in an unordered way. The individual with hearing loss is different from others since their functional level will vary. Some persons with this loss may be able to manage the verbal communication. When the other is not able to doing that, some may have the talent to read, write and speak fluently. When a child is affected by these types of losses, it loses not only communication but also education, and also loses interest in all the things and likes to live in a lonely state. The child must be treated in the early stages itself to avoid most problems. The treatment must include checking whether the child is capable of hearing sounds clearly, whether the child is affected by some other disabilities, whether the child is familiar to sign languages for communication. When these factors are checked with, the child will get a proper recovery. Their achievements are deployed by some other environmental factors to be checked, like whether the child is being treated the right way, whether the child have got any hearing aids connected, whether the child is made familiar to sign languages for better communication, whether the child is made to communicate at the early stage itself, whether the child is being cared by the family or not, whether the hearing aid given suits them properly, and also whether the child is able to hear properly with that or not, whether the child has got any neighbors or friends to communicate and develop skills, whether the child is being affected by any other disabilities also, whether the child is admitted into a appropriate school or not. When above all the environment factors are being treated and checked, the child will develop or recover quickly from this hearing loss. To compete with the normal person, hearing impairment is the condition of the ears with a hole in the eardrum. So, it must not be compared with hearing handicap. A handicap is the loss of opportunity to take part in the community with a level equal to others, but this is not the disability and can be cured in early stages and can be treated to regain it, but it is not possible in the former case. Hearing loss is the inability to hear. It may be partial or total. There are some diagnoses that help in determining hearing impairment, which is measured in decibels. Now, due to advancement in technology, nothing is impossible. Many are getting cured, also prevent it from being severe. There are many factors that cause hearing loss. The major causes are age. Hearing loss is a natural consequence of getting older. The hearing ability worsens from our 30s or 40s and onwards, and when we reach our 80s, more than half will suffer from significant hearing loss. Despite that, more than half of all hearing impaired people are of working age. It is the normal state that increases in age cause hearing loss of high frequency sounds. It may be due to illness, continuous exposure to noise, and too much of toxins. These in turn react with eardrum and make a hole which result in hearing loss. Sometimes they understand slowly. Some cases, when the opponents raise the tone, they tend to hear. Genetic. Hearing loss can be hereditary. They can be inherited from the previous generation. While referring to the genetics, these are of two different forms, syndromic and non-syndromic. Syndrome type is a cause in which all medical problems occur with hearing loss genetically. But in non-syndromic type, only hearing loss occurs without the instance of any other medical problem. Noise. We all live in a noisy world. It is an eventually reacting agent that causes hearing loss. Most of them are affected by noise, that is above the required dB, which is decibel. Noise may come from our work or from voluntary exposure to noise, such as noisy motors or loud music at rock concerts, nightclubs and discos, and from stereos. with or without the use of headphones. Also, the increasing use of portable MP3 players is causing hearing damages these days. The players are capable of delivering high sound levels and the user risks exposing their ears to highly excessive dB levels. The people residing near airports have to face this risk in their day-to-day life. The flights landing and taking off create a huge noise of 65 to 70 decibels. When people are exposed continuously to these noise, their hearing sense is degraded. When the crackers being fired at festivals and meetings create a huge dB of noise, these may affect the aged person's ear drum easily. Chemicals. There are specific drugs that also cause hearing loss. In addition, these drugs when intake without medical supervision cause adverse effects which damages the central auditory system and cause permanent hearing loss. It does not take place slowly like damage of noise, but react with high frequency to cause severe damage. Injury. When people are injured severely on the head, then there is a chance of hearing loss. But it is risky. Most of the head injuries result in death. In some cases, the ears will be injured, resulting in permanent or temporary hearing loss. We are in a position to travel safe and slow. Neurological factors. It is the disorder created by nerves. In this state, the sounds from outside is transmitted to the brain and understood, but a problem in this transmission causes the hearing disorder. So, these sounds are not transmitted to the eardrum, passes through the canal and vibrate. Illness. Hearing loss may also occur as a result of disease, infections or drugs. Some of the illness cause hearing loss. More alcoholic consumption and premature delivery which will result in non-development of auditory nerves. Some diseases like mumps, measles damage the auditory nerves which are the sensory nerves. Most important is the fetal alcohol syndrome which is more prevalent nowadays. When the mother intake alcohol during pregnancy, the child suffer from nutritional deficiency causing hearing impairment or deafness. Variations in causes, onset, degree and type of hearing loss as well as family and educational situations result in a widely diverse hearing impaired population. However, students with auditory impairments characteristically experience significant issues with regard to social and intellectual development, speech and language and educational achievement. Social development. Social emotional development in children with hearing impairment follows the same developmental pattern as those without a loss. However, since social emotional development relies so heavily on communication, the student with a hearing impairment may not participate in cooperative play or any other learning activities. Without a common communication system, the ability to develop friendships is negatively impacted. Intelligence. Research has determined that individuals with hearing impairments have normal cognitive ability in the absence of coexisting disability. Any difficulties in performance appear to be closely associated with speaking, reading and writing the English language, not the level of intelligence. Speech and language. Speech and language skills are the areas of development most severely affected for those with a hearing impairment, particularly for children who are born deaf. For individuals with mild or moderate hearing losses, the effect may be minimal. Especially with early diagnosis and intervention leading to treatment, children with more profound hearing impairments can and deafness are unable to access auditory feedback. Impairment, the normal development of speech and language. Educational achievement. The educational achievement of students with hearing impairments may be significantly delayed in comparison to that of their hearing peers. Students with a hearing impairment have considerable difficulty succeeding in an educational system that depends primarily on the spoken word and written language to transmit knowledge. Teaching methods must include most of the new techniques in the field and also monitor whether the objectives are achieved. In India, these are expectations also that allow unimpaired to take the required language, which reduces the pressure in them and develop their skills naturally. It is the family who should support the children and not put in stress and admit them in the appropriate school so that they gain proper education. There is no doubt that these children have a wide range of knowledge but does not get the field of competing with the normal. So when trained, they explore themselves in the heights. Much educational programs should be conducted so enhance their level of education. The impaired people should not be treated negatively, which in turn affects not only their education but also personal. In the above educational methods, we have come through some concerns which may act as barriers, so they must be resolved. Also, a main concern is that the technological improvement of the hearing aids has not much evolved in India. This must be taken into account from a developing country like India must not face these type of concerns. Students with auditory impairments are provided with a special educational services by a variety of professionals. These include the following specifically trained individuals. Audiologists are professionals who diagnose, treat and manage individuals with hearing impairment. Teachers of the hearing impaired are specially trained educators who provide educational support to the student, the family and other educators. The speech language specialist or a therapist provides treatment for speech and language disorders. Interpreters have specially trained individuals who relay the student anything that is said in the class by employing communicational processes such as repetition, sign language, finger spelling, body language and verbal expression. Children who are hearing impaired will find it more difficult than children who have normal hearing to learn vocabulary, grammar, word order, expressions and other aspects of verbal communication. For children who are deaf or have severe hearing losses, early consistent and conscious use of visible communication modes such as sign language, finger spelling and cued speech under amplification and or oral training can help reduce this language delay. By the age of 4 or 5, most children who are deaf are enrolled in school on a full day basis and practice special work on communication and language development. It is important for teachers and other professionals to work together to teach the child to use his or her residual hearing to the maximum extent possible. Even if the preferred means of communication is some type of visible communication, since the great majority of deaf children, approximately over 90%, are born to hearing parents, programs should provide instruction for parents on the implications of deafness within the family. Other specific strategies and services include regular speech, language and auditory training from a specialist, The use of amplification systems. The services of an interpreter for those students who use one or more communication modes, favorable seating in the class to facilitate speech reading, captioned films or videos, the assistance of a note taker who takes written notes so that student with hearing impairment or loss can fully attend to instruction, instruction from the teacher and peers in alternative communication methods such as sign language. People with hearing loss use oral or manual means of communication or a combination of two. Oral communication includes speech, speech reading and the use of residual hearing. It uses the oral methods of communication. It considers the listening and speaking as the prime mode of communication. By using the hearing aids and by the training given to the child is trained in listening to the language. When this listening training becomes successful by the children, teachers and parents collectively, the child is able to develop its speaking skills. These listening and speaking skills help the children to learn the school subjects. Manual communication involves sign language, finger spelling and or cued speech. Total communication as a method of instruction is a combination of the oral method plus sign language, finger spelling and cued speech. It is the combination of listening and speaking mode and forms the primary mode of communication. Sign system is also used with oral mode. Speech reading is generally used as a support system. The most important period for language and speech development is generally regarded as first 3 years of life, and although there are several methods of identifying hearing impairment, during the first year the average age of identification remains close to 3 years. Lesser degrees of hearing loss may go undetected even longer. The result is that for many hearing impaired infants and young children, much of the crucial period for language and speech learning is lost. There is a general agreement that hearing impairment should be considered recognized as early in life as possible, so that the remediation process can take full advantage of the plasticity of the developing sensory systems, so that the child can enjoy normal social development. Audiologists are among a team of hearing healthcare professionals who work to identify and assess disorders of hearing and balance in both pediatric and adult populations. If hearing loss is identified as impacting the patient's life, the audiologist can also recommend, select and fit appropriate amplification. Additional assessments may also be needed to find out if the patient is a cochlear implant candidate or could help through other hearing assistive technology devices. Assistive technology devices can also be called as HAT. Identification of hearing loss has never been easier than it is now. Patient populations of all ages and developmental levels can be tested subjectively or objectively to provide information about the function of their auditory system. Specialized testing for difficult to test populations has become more widely accepted and is able to perform safely and easily. Some or all of the following tests may be performed to assess our auditory system. Pure tone audiometry. It is the key hearing test used to identify hearing threshold levels of an individual, enabling determination of the degree, type and configuration of the hearing loss. PTA is a subjective behavioral measurement of hearing threshold as it relies on patient response to pure tone stimuli. Therefore, PTA is used on adults and children old enough to cooperate with the test procedure. PTA only measures thresholds rather than aspects of hearing such as sound localization. However, there are benefits of using PTA over other forms of hearing test such as click audiometry brainstem response. PTA provides ear specific thresholds and uses frequency specific pure tones to give place specific responses so that the configuration of hearing loss can be identified. Speech audiometry. Speech audiometry has become a fundamental tool in hearing loss assessment. In addition with pure tone audiometry, it can aid in determining the degree and type of hearing loss. Speech audiometry also provides information regarding discomfort or tolerance to speech stimuli and information on word recognition abilities. In addition, information gained by speech audiometry can help determine proper gain and maximum output of hearing aids and other amplifying devices for patients with significant hearing losses and help assess how well they hear in noise. Speech audiometry also facilitates audiological rehabilitation management. Otoacoustic emissions. Otoacoustic emissions are acoustic signal generated by the normal inner ear either in the absence of acoustic stimulation or in response to acoustic stimulation or electrical stimulation. Acoustically evoked autoacoustic emission testing allows the audiologist to understand how the outer hair cells of your inner ear are working. There are three types of autoacoustic emission testing. One is spontaneous measurements, transient autoacoustic emissions and distortion product. Auditory brainstem response testing. Auditory brainstem responses can be used to screen for hearing impairment in newborns. Since ABRs do not require voluntary response and can be done without a sedation. This screening test is highly sensitive. Nearly all children born with significant congenital hearing defects could be detected in the newborn nursing cares using ABRs and can be referred for further evaluations. Since ABR screening and follow-up are expensive and require trained personnel, this method has been applied principally to newborns that are at high risk for hearing impairment. Newer automated ABR technology and innovative analysis schemes may diminish costs. Hearing in noise testing. It is used to measure the person's ability to hear speech in silence and in noisy situations. During the test, the patient uses both ears together to repeat sentences. They repeat the sentences in noise and also in quiet situations. This test is for three groups. The first group is normal hearing and mild loss people, and the second is the peace officers with hearing impairment. The third is hearing aid users. Thus, the above tests are performed to identify the hearing loss persons. We have discussed most of the information about the hearing loss, is discussed also the characteristics of hearing loss. It is found that in most of the hearing impairment cases, the deafness are preventable. Many preventive measures are there like improper immunization and listening to low density voices and allows less noise in the ears. Listening to less noise is an important preventive measure. Children should be advised in childhood itself to have less exposure to loud noise. Huge consumption of alcohol during pregnancy also will affect the ears. Since education only takes a man to greater heights, this education may be affected by this type of losses. The government has formulated many rules for educating the hearing impaired individuals. This is news to welcome and also again an education. The schools are also responsible in checking their children periodically, which will avoid the later stage of hearing loss, and loss can be cured in the early stages itself. So, all the techniques must be clearly studied and must be employed so that hearing loss could be cleared in early stages before reaching deaf stage. Recognition of the problems in early stage will always lower their effect of greater density. There are some managing techniques like using hearing aids that help to increase the sound, but only at the time of use. Wireless devices that are the new invention, but they are not completely successful yet. Cochlear implants help to improve hearing in both ears. All the above helps the people only to improve hearing but not cure losses, so preventive measures must be taken.